Broken heart, imagine being hidden away by your own father in a dark, abandoned shed for 5 days. Not because of strangers, but to escape your own mother. Every creak of the wood, every shadow outside, filled us with terror. And when she finally found us, what happened next changed everything forever. The smell of damp wood filled my nose as I lay curled up beside my younger brother. Our stomachs growling so loudly it felt like the whole shed could hear. For 5 days, Dad had hidden us there, inside that abandoned shed on the edge of town, with only a few blankets, a lantern that barely worked, and a single bag of bread and apples. We weren't allowed to talk too loud. We weren't allowed to cry, even though we wanted to. We weren't allowed to make any sound that could give us away. Because if Mom found us, we knew she would destroy everything. And then it happened. On the 5th night, when the moonlight slipped through the cracks of the wooden boards, the sound of footsteps crunched on the dried leaves outside. My brother grabbed my hand, his eyes wide with terror. Dad's face went pale. The rusty door creaked slowly open, and there she was, our mother. Her eyes burned like fire, her lips curled into a smile that wasn't a smile at all. "You really thought you could hide my children from me?" she hissed, stepping inside. That was the moment I knew everything would change forever. But before I tell you what she did that night, you need to understand how we ended up locked away in that shed in the first place. I was 12 years old when everything in our family started to fall apart. On the outside, we looked like the perfect home. A neat little house with flowers by the window, a mother who always dressed well, and a father who worked hard to provide for us. But behind closed doors, things were very different. Mom wasn't the loving mother people thought she was. She could switch from sweet to vicious in seconds. One moment she would be smiling, making tea for the neighbors, and the next, she would be screaming, throwing plates against the wall, or hitting us for the smallest mistakes. My brother, Tim, was only 8, and he cried almost every night. Dad tried to shield us, but even he couldn't always protect us from her anger. It started small. She would yell at us for not folding clothes perfectly, or for spilling milk. But soon, her anger grew darker. She would lock us in our rooms without food, call us names that cut deeper than any wound, and even raise her hand against Dad when he tried to stop her. He never hit her back. He just took it, his jaw clenched, his eyes sad. I think that's when he made his decision. One night, after a particularly bad fight, Mom had smashed Dad's phone and threatened to burn his clothes. Dad slipped into our room. His hands were shaking as he whispered, "Pack a bag. Quietly. We're leaving." "Where are we going?" I asked, my heart pounding. "Somewhere safe," he said. But there was fear in his eyes. And I knew that even he wasn't sure what safe meant anymore. We tiptoed out of the house, our shoes in our hands, as Mom slept on the couch surrounded by broken glass. Dad led us down the road, across fields, and finally into the woods. There, hidden behind tall weeds and vines, stood the old abandoned shed I had seen before when we went walking. It smelled like dust and forgotten things, but Dad had already stashed blankets and food inside. "This is where we'll stay for a while," he whispered. "She won't find us here." At first, it felt like an adventure. We huddled together, told stories in whispers, and pretended the shed was a fort. But by the second day, when our bread started running out and the nights grew colder, it didn't feel like a game anymore. The hunger gnawed at us. The silence pressed in on us. And every sound outside, the snap of a branch, the rustle of leaves, made us think Mom had found us. Dad tried to keep our spirits up. He would leave for short trips, bringing back water in bottles or a little food. But each time he left, I was terrified he wouldn't come back. On the 3rd night, Tim started crying softly. "I want to go home," he whispered. "I don't care if she yells. I just want to sleep in my bed." Dad pulled him close, his own eyes glistening. "I'm sorry, son. I'm trying to protect you." Those words sank into me. Protect us from our own mother. It sounded crazy, but it was true. By the 4th day, I could see Dad was exhausted. His face was pale, his beard unshaven, his hands trembling as he tried to light the lantern. I knew he couldn't keep this up forever. And that's when it happened. On the 5th night, as we lay huddled in the dark, the shed door creaked open. The lantern flickered, shadows stretched across the walls, and there she stood, Mom. She had found us. Her breath was heavy, her hair wild, her eyes blazing with a fury I had never seen before. Dad jumped up to block her path, but she only laughed. "Do you think you can keep my children from me? Do you think you can run from me?" Her voice was sharp, slicing through the silence. My brother clutched my hand tighter, and I felt my heart pounding in my chest like it was about to burst. And then she stepped forward, reaching for me. Mom's fingers stretched out toward me, her nails sharp. Her eyes locked on mine like a predator about to snatch its prey. My throat closed up, and I couldn't move. It was Dad who acted first. He pushed her hand away and stood between us, his voice trembling but firm. "Don't touch them," he said. Mom tilted her head and let out a laugh that chilled the air around us. "Don't touch them? They're my children, not yours. You think you can take them away from me? Hide them in this filthy shed like rats." She stepped closer, her shadow swallowing us. I felt my brother's hand shaking in mine. I wanted to scream, but the words stuck in my throat. "Go," Dad whispered to me. "Take Tim and stay behind me." But before I could move, Mom lunged forward, shoving Dad hard against the wall of the shed. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Dust rained down from the wooden beams. Dad groaned but didn't fall. He stood back up, his fists clenched. I had never seen Dad fight before. He was gentle, quiet, the kind of man who fixed broken toys and kissed bruises better. But now, cornered by Mom, he looked different. His face was tight with determination, and there was fire in his eyes. "You're hurting them," he said, "and I won't let you anymore." For a moment, Mom froze. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her face twisted with rage. She grabbed the lantern, raised it above her head and screamed, "If I can't have them, no one will." Tim whimpered, and I threw myself over him, shielding his tiny body with mine. I thought the lantern would come crashing down, shattering into fire and glass. But just before she swung it, Dad grabbed her wrist. They struggled, the lantern flickering wildly between them, shadows dancing like monsters on the walls. Then, with a final push, Dad wrenched the lantern from her hand and shoved her backward. She stumbled, hit the wall, and let out a scream so full of fury it shook me to my bones. "You'll regret this, James," she spat, pointing at him with trembling fingers. "You'll regret taking them away from me." And then, just as suddenly as she had come, she turned and stormed out of the shed, slamming the door so hard the whole place rattled. Silence fell. All I could hear was my own heartbeat hammering in my ears. Dad dropped the lantern, his chest heaving, sweat dripping down his face. He looked at us with tired eyes, and for the first time, I realized just how broken he was inside. "It's not safe anymore," he whispered. "She knows where we are. We can't stay." I wanted to ask him where we would go, but the words caught in my throat. I was too scared, too tired, and too hungry. That night, Dad didn't sleep. He sat by the door, his back against the wall, as if guarding us from the monster he had once called his wife. I lay awake too, listening to the wind whistle through the cracks, wondering what Mom would do next. The next morning, Dad decided we had to leave the shed. He packed what little food we had left, wrapped Tim's blanket tighter around him, and motioned for me to follow. "Where are we going now?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. His eyes scanned the woods, alert to every sound. Finally, he said, "Somewhere far. Somewhere she'll never find us." We walked for hours, our feet aching, our stomachs growling. The forest seemed endless, swallowing us whole. Tim cried softly, his legs too weak to keep up, so Dad carried him on his back. I tried not to complain, but every step felt heavier than the last. By the time the sun began to set, my hope was fading. We had no house, no safety, and Mom could be anywhere. I kept looking over my shoulder, half expecting her to leap out from behind a tree. Finally, we stumbled upon an old, abandoned farmhouse at the edge of a clearing. Its windows were broken, its roof sagging, but it was shelter. Dad pushed open the door, the hinges screeching, and let us inside. The floor creaked under our feet, dust rising in little clouds. Spiderwebs hung in the corners, and the air smelled of rot. But it was better than the open woods. "This will do for tonight," Dad said softly. We laid down on the wooden floor, too tired to care about the dirt. For the first time in days, I closed my eyes and almost believed we might be safe. But safety doesn't last long when you're running from someone like Mom. Because in the dead of night, when the moon was high and silence covered the land, I heard it again. Footsteps. Slow, deliberate, crunching on the dry leaves outside. I froze. My eyes darted to Dad, who was already sitting up, his face pale. He pressed a finger to his lips, signaling me not to make a sound. The footsteps grew louder, closer, until they stopped, right outside the farmhouse door. Then came the sound that made my blood turn to ice. Mom's voice. Soft sing-song and terrifying. Come out wherever you are." Her voice slithered through the cracks of the broken farmhouse walls. It was soft, almost playful, but beneath it was something darker. Something that made the hair on my arms stand on end. Tim whimpered against my shoulder, and I quickly pressed my hand over his mouth. His wide eyes filled with tears as he clung to me. Dad crouched low, motioning for us to stay quiet. He tiptoed toward the door, picking up a broken piece of wood like it was a weapon. My heart pounded so hard I was sure Mom could hear it from outside. The footsteps began again, slow and steady, circling the farmhouse. The wooden boards groaned as the wind whistled through them, and every sound made me jump. "James," Mom's voice called, dripping with venom. "You can't hide them from me. They belong to me." I could see Dad's jaw clench. His knuckles turned white around the wood in his hand. He didn't answer her, didn't dare make a sound. Then suddenly, a loud thud shook the door. We all flinched. Another thud followed, harder this time. She was banging on it, trying to get in. "Open the door," she shrieked, "or I'll tear this place apart." Tim started to cry under my hand, his little body trembling. I wanted to cry too, but I knew I couldn't. Dad turned, his eyes locking with mine, and mouthed one word: "Run." My stomach dropped. Run. Where? The farmhouse had only one door, and Mom was right outside it. Before I could think, the sound of shattering glass rang out. Mom's hand shot through the broken window, clawing at the frame, her nails scratching against the wood. Her face appeared in the gap, her eyes wild, her teeth bared. "You can't escape me," she screamed. Dad lunged forward, slamming the piece of wood against the window frame, forcing her back. She shrieked, her hand disappearing, but her laughter followed, echoing through the night. "You'll regret this, James. You'll regret everything." For a moment, silence returned. Only the wind and the sound of our ragged breathing filled the room. Dad sank to the floor, his hands shaking. "I don't know how much longer we can keep running," he whispered. The truth hit me like a stone. We couldn't stay in the farmhouse. We couldn't go back home. And the longer we ran, the hungrier, weaker, and more desperate we became. The next morning, Dad led us deeper into the woods. We walked for hours, our feet blistered, our stomachs aching. Every step felt heavier than the last. At one point, Dad stopped and looked around, his face drawn with worry. "I think we're lost," he admitted quietly. Lost. The word made my heart sink. But then, just when despair was about to swallow us, we stumbled onto something unexpected. A small river, its water sparkling in the sunlight. For the first time in days, we drank until our bellies were full. Dad even caught a few fish with his bare hands, showing us how to cook them over a small fire. For a few hours, it felt almost peaceful. Tim laughed again, his cheeks dirty but his eyes bright. I splashed water on my face and almost forgot about Mom. But peace never lasted. That night, as we huddled by the fire, a sound broke through the silence. It wasn't footsteps this time. It was something else. The low growl of an engine. Headlights cut through the trees, blinding us. A van pulled up beside the riverbank, its tires crunching on the gravel. Dad leapt to his feet, his body tense. The door of the van slid open, and my heart nearly stopped. It was Mom. She climbed out slowly, her shadow long in the headlights, her smile sharp as a knife. "Did you really think you could run forever?" she said, her voice calm now, almost too calm. Dad grabbed our hands, pulling us back, but Mom only raised her arm. Behind her, two large men stepped out of the van. Strangers. Their faces were hard, their eyes cold. And in that moment, I realized this was no longer just about Mom being angry. This was something far worse. She hadn't come alone. She had brought help. The headlights burned into our eyes, making it hard to see. Dad yanked us closer, his grip firm but shaking. Tim clung to my arm, his little body trembling so badly, I thought he might collapse. Mom stepped forward slowly, her heels crunching against the gravel by the riverbank. She looked almost calm now, her rage hidden behind a chilling smile. "James," she said sweetly, tilting her head like she was speaking to a child. "Don't make this harder than it has to be. Bring them to me. We'll go home, and everything will be just fine." Dad's jaw tightened. "Home. That's not a home. Not anymore." Her smile dropped, replaced by a sharp glare. She motioned with her hand, and the two men from the van moved closer. They were tall, broad-shouldered, and silent. One carried a metal flashlight like a club. The other cracked his knuckles as he stared at us. Fear ripped through me. Who were these men? Why had Mom brought them? "You can't win, James," Mom said, her voice rising. "Give me my children now, or I'll take them by force." Dad pulled us behind him, his chest heaving. "Over my dead body." The men advanced, the night filled with the sound of their heavy boots. Dad grabbed a rock from the ground and raised it like a weapon, his whole body shaking. I had never seen him look so desperate. One of the men lunged. Dad swung the rock, catching him across the arm. The man grunted but didn't stop. The other man rushed forward, and Dad shoved him back toward the riverbank. They struggled, their feet slipping on the wet stones. "Run!" Dad shouted, his voice cracking. "Take your brother and run." I froze. My legs felt like lead. How could I leave him? But when Tim's hand tugged at mine, his eyes wide with terror, I knew I had no choice. We bolted into the trees, the shadows swallowing us whole. Branches whipped at my face, the ground uneven under my feet, but I didn't stop. Tim stumbled, and I dragged him up, my lungs burning as I forced us forward. Behind us, I could hear the chaos, the men shouting, Dad yelling, Mom screaming his name. The sound grew faint as we ran deeper into the woods, until finally, all we could hear was our own panting breaths. We collapsed beside a fallen tree, gasping for air. Tim cried quietly, his tiny body shaking against mine. I wrapped my arms around him, trying to stay strong, but inside I was breaking. "Will Dad be okay?" he whispered. I wanted to say yes. I wanted to promise him that Dad would come back to us. But the truth clawed at my throat. I didn't know. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. The night was cold, the forest dark. Every rustle of leaves made me jump, afraid Mom or the men would appear. I prayed Dad would find us, that he would be okay. And then footsteps. I held my breath, clutching Tim tightly. A shadow moved between the trees, tall and staggering. My heart leapt. "Dad," I whispered. It was him. He stumbled into the clearing, his face bruised, his shirt torn, but it was him. Relief flooded me so hard I nearly cried. He dropped to his knees beside us, pulling us into his arms. "You're safe," he whispered hoarsely. "You're safe." But I could feel his body trembling. He had fought hard to reach us, and he was hurt. "We can't stay here," he said after a moment, his voice weak but urgent. "She won't stop. She'll keep coming until she gets what she wants." "But where can we go?" I asked, my voice cracking. He looked at me with tired eyes, then said something that made my blood run cold. "There's only one place left. Somewhere she'll never follow us, but it's dangerous." Tim sniffled, his little voice trembling. "Dangerous how?" Dad didn't answer right away. He stared into the dark forest, his face grim. Then he whispered, "The abandoned quarry. It's deep. It's hidden. If we can make it there, we'll have a chance." The quarry. I had heard about it from kids at school. A place of jagged rocks, deep pits, and darkness. People said it was cursed. Some even said it had swallowed lives before. And now, Dad wanted to take us there. We set off again, moving through the forest with only the moonlight guiding us. My body ached, my feet were blistered, but fear pushed me forward. Hours passed until finally, the trees thinned, and the ground dropped away before us. The quarry loomed like a gaping mouth, shadows filling its depths. It was colder here, the air sharp and heavy. Dad led us down a narrow path, his steps careful, his hand gripping Tim's tightly. I followed close, my stomach twisting with dread. We reached the bottom, surrounded by walls of stone. The air was damp, and our footsteps echoed. It felt like a place forgotten by the world. "This is it," Dad whispered. She won't find us here. But as the words left his mouth, a sound echoed from above. The crunch of gravel. The beam of a flashlight cutting across the rocks. And then a voice that froze my blood. James, children. I told you you can't hide from me. Mom. She had found us again. And this time, she was standing at the edge of the quarry, looking down at us with a smile that promised nothing but destruction. Mom stood at the edge of the quarry, her silhouette sharp against the moonlight. Her voice echoed down into the pit, smooth but deadly. You think you can run forever, James? You think you can hide them from me? You're only making this harder on yourself. Her flashlight beam cut across the jagged rocks, blinding us as it swept past. Dad pulled us close, his body tense. I could feel his heart pounding as I pressed against him. Stay behind me, he whispered. The men appeared beside her, their hulking shadows stretching across the quarry walls. One of them pointed down at us. They've got nowhere left to go. Mom's laughter drifted down, soft and cruel. That's right. You've trapped yourself, James. You've trapped the children too. Tim whimpered, clutching my hand so tightly it hurt. My own breath came in shallow gasps. The walls around us felt like they were closing in, squeezing the hope out of me. Dad scanned the quarry floor, desperate for an escape. There was nothing, just rocks, shadows, and steep cliffs. I won't let you take them, he shouted up at her, his voice echoing off the stone. Mom tilted her head, her smile widening. Oh, James, you never had a choice. Then she motioned to the men. Go get them. They began climbing down, their heavy boots scraping against the stone. Dad pushed us back, searching for a path deeper into the quarry. We stumbled over sharp rocks, our legs aching, as the men descended closer and closer. Faster. Dad urged. Stay with me. We scrambled into a narrow passage at the far end of the quarry, the walls squeezing us tight. My arms scraped against the stone, blood trickling from the cuts, but I didn't care. We had to get away. Behind us, the men's voices echoed. They went this way. We pushed deeper until the passage opened into a dark cavern. The air was damp and cold, the ground slick with water. Our footsteps echoed loudly, giving away our every move. Dad pulled us into a corner, his chest heaving. Quiet, he whispered. Don't move. We held our breath, crouching in the shadows. The sound of the men's boots grew louder. They were close. Too close. I closed my eyes, silently begging for a miracle. And then it happened. A sharp crack split the air, followed by the groan of shifting stone. One of the men had stepped on loose rocks, and the ground beneath him gave way. With a terrified shout, he slipped, tumbling into the darkness below. His scream echoed until it was swallowed by silence. The other man froze, panic flashing across his face. We need to get out of here, he yelled up at Mom. But Mom's voice came back, harsh and commanding. No. Find them. The man hesitated, fear in his eyes, but before he could move, Dad leapt from the shadows. With a strength I didn't know he had left, he shoved the man hard. The man stumbled, lost his balance, and fell into the pit after his partner. Silence followed. Just the sound of dripping water and our ragged breaths. Dad turned to us, his face pale but fierce. It's just her now. We made our way back to the quarry floor, our steps shaky. Mom still stood at the edge, peering down at us with wide eyes. She had seen everything. Her face twisted, fury boiling over. You killed them, she screamed. You ruined everything. Her voice cracked with madness. She stumbled backward, her flashlight beam jerking wildly. You think you've won, James? You haven't. You'll never be free of me. And then, something none of us expected. As she raged, her foot slipped on the gravel at the edge. Her arms flailed, and with a scream that pierced the night, she lost her balance and fell. The world slowed. I saw her figure tumble, her flashlight spinning through the air, its beam slicing across the quarry walls. Then she hit the rocks with a sickening thud. Silence. The flashlight clattered to the ground, its light flickering before going out. For a long moment, none of us moved. The night was still. My ears rang with her final scream. Tim buried his face in Dad's chest, sobbing. I just stood there, frozen, staring at the place where she had fallen. Dad's shoulders shook. He closed his eyes and whispered, "It's over." We left the quarry before dawn, climbing out as the sky turned gray. Our bodies were weak, our spirits broken, but for the first time in what felt like forever, we weren't running anymore. We walked until we reached the road, where a passing car finally stopped and took us to safety. Days later, the police came. They asked questions. They searched the quarry. They confirmed what we already knew. Mom was gone. I thought I would feel relief. I thought I would feel safe. But instead I felt hollow. She had been cruel, vicious, dangerous, but she had also been my mother. And losing her, even in that terrible way, left an ache inside me I couldn't explain. Dad tried to comfort us. He promised things would be better, that we would build a new life, that the pain would fade with time. I wanted to believe him. I needed to believe him. And slowly, I learned something important. Sometimes, the people who are supposed to love you the most can hurt you the worst. Sometimes, family isn't about blood. It's about who protects you, who stands by you, who chooses to love you when it's hardest. Dad had chosen us. He had fought for us. He had saved us. And that, I realized, was what truly mattered. Life lesson. True family isn't just about who gave you life. It's about who risks everything to keep you safe. Love protects. Love sacrifices. And love, even in the darkest times, can lead you out of fear and into safety. This story shows us that true family isn't just about blood. It's about who protects you when the world turns dark. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you never miss the next unforgettable grandma story.